Hi everyone, I am Dr. Sonali Pattnaik. I am a poet, an academic, a visual artist, and educator from India. I am associated with St. Xavier's College here in Ahmedabad. I am an alumnus of Delhi University, where I have both studied, fetched my MPhil degree, as well as taught for many years. I have a PhD in English literature, and I have taught English literature for over 22 years now, and I continue doing that. Aside of that, I started writing poetry when I was about 12 or 13 years old. I never published my poetry except for in school yearbooks and so on, and it is only at the ripe old age of 24 or 25 I started publishing some of my poetry. In 2021, in December, in January 2022 to be more accurate, my first book of poetry called When the Flowers Begin to Speak by Writers Workshop India was published. This book has done relatively well given it's a book of poetry, and today I identify primarily as a poet. As much as I am an academic, a thinker, a feminist, and an artist, I am proudly and innately and deeply and profoundly a poet. I identify myself as a poet. Now, I would like to thank PILF for giving me this opportunity to be part of this wonderful community of like-minded people, of poets. It's a rare opportunity to be a part of such a community and to be able to share our work on a global platform, so we hear each other, learn from each other, and learn to listen to each other. Because that really is the job of literature, of poetry, to allow us to listen to different narratives and different voices and different tongues from our own. So thank you, PILF, and everyone associated with it for giving me this opportunity. The theme of this year's PILF festival is fire, or Agni. Agni is a beautiful word in itself. Fire, to my mind, is a metaphor that transcends boundaries. It transcends boundaries of language, representation, and visuality, in that sense that it can be so many things. To me, if you tell me what does it first stand for you, I would think of light. Fire is light, it is illumination. It allows us to see things, it allows us to reveal things, to interrogate, question, and to arrive at answers. It lights up, in that sense, dark corners of our mind, our heart, and of this world, right? So fire foremost is illumination, and in that sense it is deeply and keenly related to poetry, because poetry is a kind of language, is a kind of speaking, is a kind of thinking about ourselves and the world that brings light when there is no light, that brings illumination when other forms of thinking have failed. It helps us to see something anew. So that is how I interpret fire, Agni, as light primarily. It is also passion, it is also intrigue, it is also birth and generation and creativity. And creation as well as destruction. So in that sense, the fire is not something that can be confined to alterity and confined to binaries. It is this and it is that, and that's why it is so powerful. It also represents power, good power, and perhaps dark power even, right? So fire enlightens, it transcends boundaries. It is also about creation. When we sculpt or create something with something malleable like mud, like clay, we need fire to strengthen it, to make it firm, right? So in that sense, fire also gives foundation. It gives birth to something that is stable, true, and here for us to hold and to withhold and to see. Fire is also transformative, right? So we say this is a trial by fire, which is to walk through something, endure something that is extremely excruciating, intense, difficult, and to endure it and to come out of it means that we have passed through this trial by fire, right? Of course, it comes from the Ramayana and so on, but it also stands for something beyond the test of purity. It's a test of endurance, of courage, of perseverance. So fire is also that. It is also something that allows us to pass through it in a kind of intensity, a kind of perseverance that molds us, changes us, and brings out something definitive and wonderful because we pass through this very, very intense journey, because we endured. So fire is light, it's illumination, it's transformation, and to me it is also courage and justice and anger. All of these things, especially as a woman in a very patriarchal society, I have always felt that fire stands for the feminine spirit, because women give birth not only in the literal sense but in so many other ways. They nourish and nurture like the warmth of fire. They're full of emotions, they're blazing like fire, and they have to go through a lot of intensity and endurance like fire, and they have the ability to transform, but they also have the ability to burn like fire. So when there is injustice, fire also stands for that kind of just anger, the good anger that allows us to do something that brings back justice to injustice, right? So in that sense, fire stands for anger that is denied to women in a society that denies women intensity, passion, anger. Fire to me stands for all of those things as well. So a lot of my language, a lot of my poetry is poetry of fire. So I'm extremely grateful that I'm being allowed to showcase poetry that is about fire within the theme of this beautiful topic. I'm going to read 3 poems that are from my book, When the Flowers Begin to Speak, and I'm also going to share some poems that have not yet been published, some chosen for being published and some not yet been published anywhere, new poems as well. So all of these poems, I think, stand for the various meanings of fire that I have spoken about here and interpreted, both in my work as well as here in this talk. The first is called light. So fire is light primarily. Oh, don't be so surprised. Fear and hatred have always traveled faster than light. Light will come through, drowning all your sound and fury. Light must come through, broken perhaps, but in time. The next poem that I'll be reading is called Courage, because fire is also about bravery. It is about courage, and courage is not about boastful strength. It is something that many marginalized people, many women, many who are less than heard often display, but we take for granted, right? It takes a lot of courage to simply be who you are. So fire as courage, and this is my poem, Courage. Know exactly who you are. You know, always. Only touch that truth. breathing it in. Belief is bodily. Don't you let others talk you out of your skin. It is your face. Walk the night, take it slow, curling your toes as you go. Walk away, sway, lose the compass at your hips. Take it all the way. Take it all the way. I will also read a poem called Not Your Nude, and this is my interpretation of fire as just anger, feminist anger, right? At a society that believes that it can tell women what to do, what to wear, how to be, as though we are not equal citizens, as though we are not all human who should have our right to be, say, speak, wear just as we want to. Of course, it is much more than that, this poem. It is called Not Your Nude. The female body titillates you, humiliates you, but most of all, it horrifies you. Breasts unasked for, appearing untimely and underwired, are cause for fear. When they don't disappear under the fog of your objectifying desire. Birth and menstruation scare you. Blood, too much blood. Blood you want to shed and own. But blood flowing freely, out of line. Blood in no mood to be contained. Blood that will not be managed and erased or soaked horrifies you. So you try to tame its femininity with your masculine name. You give her blood your name. A single woman with a child intimidates you more than a warmongering man. Sending millions to their graves, a life saved outside of the normative dismays you more than one slain at the altar of patriarchy. A woman must be rightly accompanied. A woman must be rightly occupied. Reproduction is her task. Her rights over her body must be denied. Whether she is giving birth or not, she must be infantilized, from her own self kept aside. A mother who knows what she would do bothers you. I'm going to skip to the end of this poem because it's a long one. To have lived so far from the truth, wrapped yourself tight in the flag of falsity, burrowed so deep into the cave of masculine make-believe, living by the lies of self-origination and women's self-objectification and other codes of abiding hypocrisy, having drawn the borders of families and nations by contorting, stretching, manning this body. Even a single flash of the real, a woman living in, through, out of her own body, say wearing a burqa at the beach, undoes you. That woman who says no, refuses to fall neatly into your binariculars of want, not want, scares the living daylights out of your fragile manda. For that body is not your nude, not the one you remember from the airport magazine or the studio table. That body appears instead as the ghost of all your murdered truths, not your nude. I'm going to read a poem that is about rethinking the witches of Macbeth, the three witches. Who were they? Who are they? I ask as a scholar of literature, as an educator, as a feminist, as a woman of our times. This poem is to be published in the Hong Kong Review shortly. Fair is foul. Fair is foul, foul is fair, they croaked the witches three. And the professor said it was horror, that it was premonition and supernatural. Also a kind of subversion, that being women and outlaws, they sit at the fringes of society and yet know the truth somehow before it comes to pass. A tragedy this, because it is a mockery of power and control. A comedy, as they are laughable and yet they laugh. I followed them home as they gathered up their things, sticks, pots and inks, and packed up their spells. One had to hear from her husband that she had burnt the soup by overstirring and had the cauldron turned upon her. The other had a court order served, where the man who had tried to kill her child as a fetus was trying her for defamation, saying she cast a spell on him, turned white her burnt face on a date night. The third attended a group therapy session, where she spoke of how when she was little her grandfather touched her wrong, but her parents called her a liar when she complained. So she knew early what equivocation meant. The next day they returned to the forest, the burns on their faces concealed, their eyes tired from lack of sleep, their hearts broken, and their voices joined in a chorus as the three recited together, "Foul is fair, fair is foul." And a man, full of his own want, happened to cross their path. I rewrote my answer. I joined in their laughter. I picked up a pen, letting my voice bleed into the bubbling cauldron. Fair is foul, foul is fair indeed. The words churned. I too was a witch who could read the future. I want to end with a poem that summarizes my idea of the fire behind why I write. It's called Why I Write. I write as it's the way I have known to know in a do as you are told world. I write to strip. It's not as easy as you think. Not for me, not for the one by the pole. I write as though I am making myself or learning to touch what I think I know. I write to dress old wounds with words, for silence festers and forgotten words swell. I write in hibernation to shelter a world-weary soul from endless winters and storms. I write to walk on a path less trodden and even lesser known, to go the way alone. I write to rewrite upon palimpsestic pages, for nothing, nothing is engraved in stone. I write to equivocate on issues that are non-issues, but they would that I take a stand on. I write as I love, as though I were humming an old song whose words I have long forgotten, whose tune I know by heart. I write to speak in tongues that I was not taught, so that I can say so much that you may not, when you speak in taught words. I write to carve my own shape from slippery, malleable mud. I write to dip my hands in ink and leave behind word footprints. I write, if it is not legible enough, to redefine the divine plot. Thank you. I would like to say that ultimately fire is what makes us create. Fire is the metaphor, the thing, the impulse, the intensity, the element of regeneration and creation. And that, I think, is where all poetry comes from. There is feminist fire in me, there is creative fire in me, there is the fire of transformation, the fire of hope and desire which burns in my words and burns in me and burns in all of us as writers and poets, to work, to write, and to hold a moment, to create eternity and to create immortality, and to work towards change, to work towards a more harmonious, a more beautiful, a more eternal planet and community. So I hope that we can all come together to transform ourselves in the fire of birth, rebirth, change, and hope and desire. Thank you, Panorama International Literature Festival, for giving me the chance to put my words of fire out there with like-minded people, with a global community of writers and poets. Thank you.